Hello and welcome back to the Port. I'm the Gavin Major and this is Sea Trials. Sea Trials is your submissions with my commentary and tactical overlays. Now, when it comes to the tactical overlays, it's just basically little pointers that I'm doing as I go along. Now, it's not really to be super critical, or I don't want people to be taking offense from it. And obviously, you have to bear in mind I am being very wise after the moment, considering I can pause, I can replay and stuff like that. Whereas I understand that when people are playing, they are playing in the heat of the moment. So, this is more of just things I know that I think about at times, because sometimes even I make mistakes, and it's just a nice way of just passing on those tips to other players. So it's not really me being super critical of people's gameplays. Now today we have a submission from YTBrandonABC. For the rest of the review, I'm just going to call him Brandon, and he's playing the Tier 6 Jervis, which he has fully upgraded. His modules and command build will be down in the description. Now this is a Tier 5 and 6 game of domination on Sleeping Giant. On the friendly team, there's a Fubuki, Brandon in his Jervis, a Grafs Bay, a Lagazianaire, Algeria, Atlanta, and Izamal. On the enemy team, there's a Fubuki, Jervis, Leander, York, Algeria, Boise, Izamal, and California. And you may have noticed that the first thing that Brandon's done is something that I always recommend. Open up that team screen and see what's on the enemy team. I call it the shipping forecast. You're just seeing what ships are on the enemy team, whether there's divisions and things like that. Now, I have done an entire playlist on regarding doing shipping forecasts, and that'll be carded top right now. It is a bit old, but it's there if you want to. Now, looking at the enemy team, there's three ships I'm definitely going to be concerned about. There's the Jervis, because she's a destroyer with sonar. There's the York, she's a German heavy cruiser, and she's got a very extended sonar range, so another one that you don't want to be getting close to. And then there's the Boise, and the reason why I'm flagging the Boise is because the Boise does come with radar, so being aware of her location and staying outside her radar range is going to be pretty critical. And so into the game we go. So spawning on the right hand side near the Delta objective, having a quick look around, spawned with friendly Algeria and the Lagazianaire, so it's always worth noting what ships you spawn alongside. Moving up into the Delta objective. Note that the friendly destroyers that he spawned alongside seem to be moving off the left, but ideally I'd like to see one go left and one go right. The reason being is if you have one out on the right hand side, at least that means you can form a crossfire and also have some control over that right hand side next to where the is quite open. Ideally you want like a good open water cruiser. Switching down to 3/4 speed, the reason being is obviously the cruisers aren't pushing much further ahead, therefore it's going to be quite not too long until Brandon finds himself slightly isolated from the protection of his team, especially being that most of them seem to be boarding up in towards that centre left. Enemy team starting to be spotted. First up we have the Algeria. Requesting support because obviously he's over here on his own, unfortunately. Behind the Algeria we have the Izamal, and then obviously off to the right we have the California. So slowing it down a little bit here, just because it's easy to identify that Brandon is probably the only person on his team at the moment who's doing any spotting, although the destroyers who are going into the Bravo objective seem to be now spotting a cruiser in the centre. Now a nice one there is Brandon does keep checking the teams in the map. The reason being is he's just making sure that there's no divisions or anything like that, reminding himself of the ships in the game as he goes along. So he has the Algeria spotted, and it's quite obvious to see what ships he has spotted, because as he goes around behind this island, the number of enemy ships will suddenly drop off detectability. So there's no point really pushing up much further, and doing this turn and getting in behind this island. First of all, he's got the island as cover, and if he needs to, he can always evade off to the left of the map. Obviously spotted by an enemy destroyer, which is off to his stern. So he's still in a good position here if he needs to. However, worth noting that a friendly cruiser is actually moving into the objective, or into this general area as support. So he isn't completely alone anymore, which therefore justifies being able to stay around a little bit longer rather than having to vacate the area. Now here I'd be tempted to put sonar on simply because if that destroyer is coming round behind him, there's a potential that there will be torpedoes into his smoke screen, because smoke screens usually make quite good torpedo magnets. Backing up, see, no, California's pushing in, but it looks like the California's going to turn to her port side, which means that she'll be evading any kind of torpedoes that Brandon might be able to send up. So here he's unspotted, and he's getting some shots in the Algeria. The reason he's spotted, that means that the enemy destroyer is within that kind of vicinity and outside of his detectability when not firing. And there's the Jervis. So we know we're going to have to duke it off with the Jervis. Now here's quite interesting. So he turns to port, and the reason being is he's keeping that island behind him, between him and the California, the Ismore, and the Algeria. So that way he's basically got this down as a 1v1, and he's getting himself nicely anchored in here, popping a smoke because his engine's got knocked out using the damage con. Now he can't damage con again, so it's worth using the smoke to disengage. And obviously the friendly cruiser is keeping the Jervis spotted because the Jervis is pushed down a little bit too far. Again, a little prompt, maybe it might be worth putting sonar on. You know what destroyers are like, they sometimes will just chuck torpedoes anywhere, especially into a smoke screen. However, worth noting the Jervis engines are knocked out, so he's not going anywhere. So if you just keep your guns nicely trained on like you have, you should be able to keep piling on the pain, gaining the kill. Worth noting that the California seems to be pushing in, so she's getting very close. Torpedoes, but thankfully it looks like they're targeting the enemy cruiser. And California could either keep pushing on, or looks like, oh, so she's turning off to her starboard side, which means she'll be coming around to the other side of the island. Possibly an opportunity to do an ambush, although the California should be quite aware that you're working in this vicinity and you haven't really moved off too much. Now, worth noting that the California being a tier 5, she will auto-detect you at 2 kilometers range. So you just got to watch that number underneath the California and try and make sure that stays above 2 kilometers. However, there's quite an awkward position here, whereas if he reverses maybe a little bit too much, there's potential that the Algeria might spot him. So as the California closes in, you can see that the Algeria also pushes out. Therefore, I don't think there's really a good situation here. I mean, ideally, you could keep backing up to stay outside 2 kilometers range from the California, but then you're probably going to get spotted by the Algeria. So this is why it might be tempted maybe to do a UE, just do full ahead, do a hard starboard turn, and almost switch the sides of your ship towards the California. But alternatively, the California knows you're here, so she's not going, well, she shouldn't rush around. Now there's a little cheeky tactic. He's using the almost like the third-person peek from lock gun view in order to see what the turrets are doing on the California, noting that the California's turrets are actually not looking at him. He's in a nice position here where he can take advantage of the California. Now the nice one with the single launches, you can kind of lay out a suitable set of torpedoes. However, he's being picked on by the York and Algeria chips in as well, so that does unfortunately take Brandon out of the game. But he's managed to get himself 55,000 damage, 4 floodings from 6 torpedo hits and 2 kills. Looking at the teams are pretty even at the moment. It looks like Brandon's team has just pulled ahead in number of ships and is pulling ahead in the number of caps as well. So now we're just going to be looking over how the rest of this game develops. Brandon's done his effort. He's got rid of the battleship that was playing aggressive. He's got rid of the destroyer which was trying to outflank. But something I want to note on the map is just that battleship on the friendly team, which is just pushing up to the north of Bravo. He's now isolated from his team. He's seeing red and he's just pushing for blood, and unfortunately that means that he's going to find himself isolated very quickly and focused by a lot of enemy ships. But this gives a nice idea of where the general distribution of cruisers are on Brandon's team. We've got 3 cruisers between Delta and Bravo, and we have 2 cruisers in the Alpha objective. Now, enemy York is turning away from the Charlie objective, which does mean the Algeria is going to be isolated. So there's a good potential for the three friendly cruisers near Delta to possibly push the Algeria, knowing it's going to be isolated. Briefly highlighted the map was how the friendly battleship is being isolated, and now you can see he's coming under fire from the York from behind him. He's got the enemy Ismail ahead of him, and he's also got two enemy cruisers off to his port side. So the Ismail's found himself at an island at the moment. I think if I was at Ismail, I'd continue that turn and probably break off the engagement. Jumping on board with the Atlanta while the friendly Graf Spey knocks out the enemy York. And you can see that excluding the Ismail, the friendly cruisers have basically formed like a line of defence, which is a good thing. Now, we've had it called out that there's victory in sight, and generally what that means is basically your team has won unless the enemy kill you all. I think that basically means that you're so far ahead that it's not possible for the enemy to catch up on the caps alone, and they are going to have to use a mixture of caps and kills or just kills. Now this Atlanta is, as Brandon's saying, no, this Atlanta is not really recognising the island symbol when he's using his guns, so unfortunately he's just piling it onto the island, unfortunately. However, the enemy Algeria is isolated, and we do have two Atlantas here, so this is definitely an acceptable push, I can say. Looking at the minimap, the Ismail has decided that he's going to go guts or glory, and he's rushing around the corner, and therefore he's literally isolated himself against two cruisers in the battleship. And we also have a friendly cruiser which looks like he's also pushing up, moving away from the pack towards the pack of enemy ships. That simply means he's again isolating himself, preparing himself to be focused, especially once the friendly Ismail goes. There goes the friendly Ismail. So unfortunately, I think that cruiser up to off to the north is the Graf Spey. So he's literally now going to be the focus of the enemy fire. And you can see that the Graf Spey has literally done a quick hard to starboard, is now running towards the Delta objective. Here's the Algeria. So hopefully these two Atlantas between them should be able to mop him up. There we go. And so now you just need to look at, so obviously Brandon's team do have the ship advantage. They've got 5 ships and the enemy have only got 3 ships. They've also got the cap advantage. They've got 3 caps, the enemy only have 1 cap. They also have the points advantage. They're approaching 900 at the moment, and the enemy is probably only about 425-ish. And there's only 4 minutes of the game. Victory, it's already in the bag. So it's just simply going to be, there's no reason to push the enemy, there's no reason to really engage the enemy. Now's an acceptable position to stop fighting and start running. Like, if you just turn away and sail away, you'll be fine. But this Atlanta, in a rush to get his guns on target, sticks himself into an island, broadside on, and unfortunately, pop he goes from the Ismail. Then we have a Lagazionaire, which hasn't recognised that it's time to fall back and is pushing in. We have a Graf Spey, which is unfortunately cornered, but he does take the Boise with him. So now this just leaves the Lagazionaire, the Algeria, and the Atlanta. Lagazionaire's going in. And look at the points now, just gone past 900. With all those sacrifices. So the Ismail bags himself another kill. So now you're an even number of ships, but you still have the cap lead and the point lead. It's time to fall back, chaps. There's no necessary gain from killing. Okay, you kill the Leander. Now it's time to stop. It's time for that Atlanta to reverse up. It's time for that Algeria to do a hard to starboard and start sailing south. There's nothing to be gained here. And this is the thing, you just end up with players who are bloodthirsty and they just want that damage, they just want that one last kill. Victory is in the bag, there's no there's nothing really to be gained apart from that little bit of damage and that one additional kill. I think the Atlantis is going to suddenly realise the error of his ways. So Slayer of War on the enemy team is really having a field day with these light cruisers. I think the Algiers now suddenly realise maybe pushing up was a bad idea, but it's too late now. He's too close. I mean, if you're in torpedo range of the enemy battleship, then you're definitely too close, especially with the amount of health he's got. So, just watch the score. 900, so close to winning. 960 points. However, this is looking like they've grasped defeat from the jaws of victory. Well, that's the end of the game, unfortunately. It's a very unsatisfactory defeat, I guess you could say. There was so many occasions there where all it took was one ship to go, we're so close to winning, I'm just going to sail away. And they would never have been spotted by the Ismail again. You got to remember this game is pre-carriers, so there's no carrier left to send its planes to try and find the ship that's run away to the edge of the map. Now, who the blame lies with at the end there, I think it's like a shared blame. The Graf Spey, by pushing forward, got himself really hurt and kind of got himself pinned. The Atlanta, focusing so much on his guns, accidentally rammed into the island. The other Atlanta got so greedy for the damage that he pushed forward and exposed himself. But he was probably thinking the Algeria would be able to handle himself, so if he went pop, he'd be fine. The Algeria probably thought the Atlanta was going to be okay hiding behind the island, therefore he was going to push up and be aggressive. The La Gazinière charging in like that. I'm not quite sure, maybe. I think as the number of ships goes down, obviously the responsibility for the player goes up. And I think there's no shame in turning your ship around and going to the back of the map when you've already won the game. So there was no reason for like the ships that turned up at towards the end, the ones which were at the back, there was no real reason for them to continue to commit to the fight. Even if it was just one of them, all it took was one of them to realise the situation, turn around, sail away, get the win. That's all it took. And unfortunately, they just all got greedy. They all just wanted that little bit more damage, that little bit more that more kills, and they paid for it. And serves them right at the end of the day, I think. But hopefully, this video showcases why the importance of running away, the importance of retreat. So, scores on the doors though at the end of the day for Brandon, getting himself 55,000 damage, 6 torpedo hits, 4 flooding, 2 kills, 1 fire, and getting himself a devastating strike as well against their California. So, quite a nice, pretty amount of ribbons there. Going on to the team scores, and Brandon coming in third on his team. In first place is the Graf Spey, second place is La Gazinière. But it's Slayer of War on the enemy team. He conserved his health, I guess you could say, or conserved his position, and at the end he managed to take advantage of light cruisers rushing into the jaws of the beast, one by one in a piecemeal fashion, and he was just able to pick them off. The Ismail should never be underestimated. She is very accurate and will destroy cruisers. I've been on the receiving end of her many occasions. Don't underestimate an enemy battleship, especially when in this kind of situation. Obviously going to the economy and managed to make himself 77,000 credits with premium accounts. So all in all, quite a nice amount of credits. Doing himself quite well there. It's just a shame that his team was so committed to getting the damage that they let it go, unfortunately. So down in the description will be the commander build and the ship modules used by Brandon on his Jervis. Now he also wanted to share a message, and so that'll be up on the screen now. And he basically wants to say he'd like to thank Back the Book for featuring his video on the channel, and also would like to thank all the viewers for watching it. If you have enjoyed this Sea Trials, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you enjoy this kind of content, feel free to subscribe. And if you aren't already subscribed, I'd like to say thank you very much, guys. If you want to send in your own game captures for Sea Trials, which is you've just watched one, or amateur reports, which would be there'll be a big example of that on the end screen, then feel free to send them in to the email address which is down in the description. If you want to support the channel on Patreon, you can do that as well. The link to Patreon is down in the description. Until next time, I'm the guy from Measure, and back to the port.